Welcome everybody to the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, our final air show weekend of the 2015 year. It's been a great one. Beautiful day today. We had a wonderful show, great crowd, flew a lot of airplanes today, and now we're settling in for one more day tomorrow. Standing here in front of Cole Palin's original, somewhat original, 1909 Bleriot Type 11. We build this airplane as the oldest flying aircraft in the United States, with a few stipulations. It's not all original, but there's a lot of original pieces and parts on it, including its original data plate, serial number 56, pretty neat. This airplane made a beautiful flight down the runway today, along with all the other airplanes that we flew.
Hi, my name is Matt Hewer. I've been volunteering at the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome for 3 years now. In this last year, 2015 season, I had the privilege of flying a few aircraft here, and one of which was the Bleriot 11. The Bleriot 11 at old Rhinebeck Aerodrome was donated to Cole Palin in 1952 by a gentleman by the name of Bill Champlin. Bill had procured the aircraft from a person named Mr. Colburn, and he got the airplane by noticing that it was out in an airfield in wreckage. I guess it was crashed in a air meet in 1910. So he got the airplane. It was about 25% complete at the time. And so the rear third and the front third of the airplane are original. You can see from some of the pictures on our website some of those details, the wheel here, and I know the engine mount in the frame there you can see in some of those pictures. So those are the original pieces of the airplane. You can see some of those pictures at oldrhinebeck.org, our website. So from that they rebuilt the wings and some of the tail section in order to get it in flying condition, which they got it flying here in about 1961 or so. So the Bleriot's claim to fame is it was the first aircraft to ever cross the English Channel. It did this in 1909 by Louis Bleriot. This was his 11th aircraft design, which he built. He crossed the English Channel in 1909, and on the way over he hit a rainstorm, which actually benefited him because it helped cool the engine, because engines were air-cooled, and they had a tendency to overheat, especially at the lower speeds that a Bleriot would fly at. So that helped cool the engine, and he ended up making it across the English Channel. There was a prize of, I believe, 1,000 pounds at the time. So that gave him some, wherewithal to continue his financing, and he received some more orders for that type of airplane. The engine on the Bleriot 11 that we have is an Enzani, but it's in a Y configuration. It's just a little bit different than the original that was used on Louis Bleriot's flight. It was also an Enzani, but it had the 3 cylinders that were straight up instead of the Y configuration that we have on ours today. Alright, so I got my private pilot license in 1991, and I've been flying since then. I flew commercially, I flew freight, and I flew commercially for an airliner. I've flown glass cockpit jets, and after being laid off from the airlines, I ended up back in Red Hook, New York, near the aerodrome, and that's why I decided to come over and get back into flying. The Bleriot 11, obviously quite a bit different than what I was flying before, but after a few flights in a Piper Cub at Great Barrington, I got back into flying smaller aircraft again. Although the Bleriot 11 is quite a bit different than anything that I had flown previously, due to its rudimentary design. It does have somewhat conventional controls, and for Pioneer aircraft, sometimes the controls were all over the place, but some of the controls on a Bleriot are similar to what you would normally find. There is a stick that has both pitch and roll, and rudder pedals that you use with your feet. But that's about where some of the similarities end. The Bleriot is rather underpowered, so trying to get it off the ground in an airstrip like Old Rhinebeck, where it's a little short, sometimes you're flying, trying to go uphill for takeoff, can be a challenge on the hot summer days. So that's the first challenge in flying it. The other is the controllability is not very great. It uses the wing warping, where you twist the entire wing rather than using ailerons, and that leads to not as much control over roll. So flying the Bleriot, one of the things that you have to do when you take off is the tail has to be raised rather high in the air, because if you can see in this picture here, the wing has a high angle of incidence and quite a bit of camber. So as it sits level on the ground, and even if you raise the tail a little bit, you still have, it looks like a big parachute hanging out there. And with all that drag and the low power of the engine, you will not get very far unless you raise the tail high and try and get that wing, streamlined with the wind there. And after you reach flying speed, just a little nudge back then on the control stick, she'll take off. The tricky part is on the landing. As you're trying to pull the power back, because you have to slow up and stop eventually, the rudder loses a lot of its control effectiveness, and that makes it prone to ground looping on landing. So it was quite a switch going from a glass cockpit airplane to practically no cockpit airplane. We're going from total automation to almost no instrumentation at all. There's a tachometer and a oil pressure gauge, and that's about it. Control stick and it's kind of similar, except on the top it's got a what they call a cloche, I think. Yeah. In French it stands for bell. So it's kind of like this weird, it looks like kind of like a steering wheel, except it doesn't move, but that's what you actually hold on to that. So you're kind of holding on to that as you're moving the stick back and forth and left and right. Kind of like this instead of like that. So you kind of, going like that and like that. So it just feels a little weird. But other than the controllability issues and the power issues, that's all I know the difference of. It can be, it can be challenging. So you would think that taking an airplane off and flying it 5 feet off the ground and just putting it back down again, an airplane with simple controls would be easy, but it's actually harder than pretty much any other airplane I've flown to date. So including some of the biplanes like the Fleet and the Piper Cubs and stuff like that. So but like I said, even though it's kind of awful to fly, it's to be expected, because they were learning how to do everything. They didn't have computer models or anything else. It was all trial and error. Let's try this and see how it goes, and eventually they got something that worked good enough, and they would put that out there and use it. It's neat to be able to fly and be around some of these things, because these were the foundations of what was to come. It was all, it's all steps on a path leading to better things. So it's neat to be a part of that history and seeing what they were thinking, and kind of how they designed things to do what they needed to do at the time. And because they might not have had the technology to do one thing, they got around it by doing something else, like the rotary engine for cooling, because cooling was an issue like we talked about earlier. The rotary engine, the whole engine spins, and that's the help of cooling. And a lot of people look at that today and say, man, how did they do that? So they might not have had all the technology for this, but they found ways around it in order to get it to work. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it did advance. From 1909, you got the Bleriot, and 1942, you got the Fleet Finch. It's amazing how fast they progressed in that short amount of time.
All the other airplanes that we flew. Old Rhinebeck's been here since 1958, and we sure appreciate everybody's support from the community. If you want to stop out and see what's going on, there's a lot of great airplanes on display. We are working very hard to finish up the Spirit of St. Louis airplane, Charles Lindbergh's famed transatlantic aircraft, an exact reproduction. Almost done here. It was the founder of the aerodrome, Colt Palin. It was one of his many dreams to have a Spirit of St. Louis flying here at the aerodrome, and it's almost done. Want to come out and take a look at it? We encourage you to do so. We really like the fact that the Rhinebeck, Red Hook, Tivoli, the whole northern Dutchess area supports the aerodrome. We see a lot of local faces out here on the weekend. We've got a lot of local folks out here working with us and volunteering as well. There's some great volunteer opportunities out here, great ways to support Old Rhinebeck. If you like old airplanes, old cars, buildings and grounds, we need all the help we can get, and it's nice to get it locally. So we encourage you to come out. If you can't make it this year, we'll be open again in the middle of June 2016, and we'll start right back up where we're leaving off.
Members and volunteers are needed at the Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome, so head on over to oldrhinebeck.org.